1, 2, 3, clap. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Entrepreneur Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. I'm your host, Katey Maddux, founder, speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, and avid traveler. And I'm here with one of my dear friends, Astrid Daniela Galvez.
Woo.
I'm so excited. We are in Las Vegas.
Woo.
We are filming from QuickBooks Connect, the accounting conference, Intuit QuickBooks Connect. And so I'm here with all my favorite accounting, tax pros, financiers, And so I was like, what an awesome opportunity to have some of my favorite people on the podcast and really get to pull from them. So I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invite. This is exciting to be part of this journey with you. Like she said, we're in Vegas and we're in a conference. We're connecting with our community of accountants, and this is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited because we only met this year.
Yeah.
At the Appy Camp, where we met like all the influencers and educators of the accounting world. The podcast wasn't even born yet when we met.
Yeah.
And that's actually where I decided, like coming home from that, where I decided to even start a podcast. I was like, what, if we're being brought to this influencer and educator retreat, am I influencing and educating? And if I'm not, like, what am I doing here, And so I was like, how can I give back to the community that I love? And so it was kind of going through like, okay, well, what is the community that I love? Who do I love to influence and educate? And so that's how this was born. And so I was going through the list of like all the people at Appy Camp, and we had some of the most awesome, powerful, educated, brilliant minds.
Influential.
Yeah,
for
of
sure.
the accounting world
You
together.
included.
And so I was just like, this is the perfect kind of group to pull from in terms of like starting a podcast and adding value to entrepreneurs. So I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh,
and
I'm
you live
excited.
in Oregon.
I live technically in the state of Washington, but let's just say collectively in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay. It's like, don't you live near?
I live near Oregon, so it's right the division of the Columbia River. And I live in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon is the next city south.
Got it. Okay. I'm always like, no matter how many times people explain the Pacific Northwest to me, I'm like, yeah, but I don't
It's
know.
beautiful. It's beautiful. We love the mountains. We love hiking. We love nature. It's a beautiful place for me to be in because it allows me to really connect to that one piece that I love, which is being outside and being involved in nature. So I love it. And what you were saying earlier about connecting at Appy Camp, that was exactly the point where everybody had that connection, I guess, that aha moment where we felt like, what else are we going to do coming out of this retreat? And I love how that was a retreat. It wasn't a conference like the one we're in today.
Yeah.
Because we were able to connect with the community, meet new people, make new friends at a different level and more meaningful, and connect to serve the community so that each of us, when we finished the camp, we went back home and we started to think, okay, what are we going to do now to serve those or that community that we feel connected to? And I'm so happy you're doing this because I didn't really follow you until now, and I am in awe of all the things that you do, and I just love that you have this going on too. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited, and I felt like we connected so well, just like right off the bat too. So many things, but especially because obviously you're from Latin America, so you'll want to tell them about your story. But like, being that I live in Miami, like I'm also in a very Latin market, and so when I was thinking about creating this podcast, I was like, who are the people who are in my circle and who are the people that we're going to reach? And, my accounting company is Millennial Accounting. I serve predominantly Millennial and Gen Z business owners. Not all. I have some that are Gen X and Baby Boomers, but predominantly that. And then being that I'm in the Miami world, I work with a lot of Latins. you know? And so like Latino culture is so a part of my circle and so a part of my influence that I was like, you are the perfect person to come and like bring your love and passion for working with Latino business owners, you know? So why don't you tell them like where you're from, what you do?
My favorite part.
Yeah.
Like you said, I am Latina. I was raised in El Salvador, the tiny, smallest country in America. I am so proud of my roots. I come from a family of strong women. My mom being the matriarch of our home. She is a salesperson at heart since always. And I work with my two sisters. So now the three of us work together, my two sisters and I. But before that, we grew up in an environment that doesn't really allow you the opportunity to grow, unfortunately. And many people that were raised in a third world country would probably relate to this, right? Because it's very difficult. But we had the wonderful opportunity to come to the United States, and the love that we have and respect that we have for this country is there always. And one way that I feel that I can pay back the community or the country that has welcomed me here and my family is by sharing my knowledge, sharing what I know with the community that I love, which is the Hispanic, Latino, Latinx community. Because that is where my heart is, right? Like I said, I was raised in a third world country, and then I come to this monster of a country in a good sense. And I have these vast opportunities. Yeah. So my goal has always been to get the education, right, that I can get and pass that on to the community that I serve. And with the help of my two sisters, we formed this beautiful partnership in sisterhood, clearly, to serve that community through accounting services and tax services and business advising services, which is what we have been doing for the last 9 years. We celebrated our 9th year anniversary in October. So yay! We're getting very close to that 10-year mark, and we're so excited. So that's how we started. Now, the purpose behind that, like I was sharing with you in other conversations, is that we are in a community that needs help. We speak Spanish, and we also speak the community language, which is something that is a cultural connection that we are able to make. So with that in mind, that's what we try to do. And that's part of my story. And I take that with me since always, whenever I get a chance to meet with a client.
I love that. That's so beautiful of how you're like making your passion also your purpose, you know, like your passion is for your people. Yeah. And so making that, like, how can I also make that a business? Because a business is also a passion. Yes. You know, how can we marry like the love for the kind of people that we like and what we like to do in terms of like money and management and numbers, you know, like a skill that you have in management with like, who do you want to work with? Like, that's the beauty of business ownership, you know, like that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur is that you get to choose who you work with. Yes. You know, and like I pick a generation and you pick, you know, an ethnicity and like, it's not like one is better or the other is better. It's just like, who do I have passion to help? Yes. You know? And so I just think it's so beautiful just meeting with all these different entrepreneurs, even at QuickBooks Connect, you know, and just being like, what's your niche? What's your niche? What's your niche? And so many people think like a niche has to be an industry, but it absolutely doesn't. I agree. Like when I first started my firm, my niches were property management and real estate. And still a lot of my clients are property management and real estate. And I still have most of the clients that I started my business with 6 years ago. But I kind of shifted to, okay, I like working with retail and property management clients, but I also love working with creatives. I also love working with service-based businesses. And then I was like, it's actually not necessarily the industry that I love. It's like the level of business and a type of human. You know what I mean? Yep. Like people who are technology savvy. That's why I use Liscio, you know, because I can DM them from my phone and it sends them a push notification that's like, hey, your accountant needs something from you, you know? Yes. And so it's like people who want to be self-starters, who I can be like, here's a Loom video of what you need to do. Yeah. Watch the video and do the work. Because why? Because they're young people who like to do self-service.
Yes.
You know, that's part of like learning your niche is like, how do they like to do business? And do the way that they like to do business line up with the way that you like to do business?
Absolutely.
And that's how you find your niche.
Exactly.
And I love what you had said earlier about moving your office to that part of the city, because that's where the people were that you wanted.
Yes. And one thing that you mentioned that to me is super important, you said that sometimes we have to shift or we have to pivot our practices or our service to help those that we feel connected with and those that we align with. Yeah. And necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily be an industry. It can be a community, right? In my case, I found out that the community was lacking good advisory services in accounting and tax. And I started to do more research, right? Start using the resources that are available to us as professionals, and then realize, how can I bring in my skill sets into helping this community become stronger, bigger, and why not wealthier, right? Because we are in the money business, and we have the opportunity in this beautiful country, and I'm not going to stop saying this, of becoming bigger than what we imagined that we could be. And if you ask the 8-year-old Astrid Daniela Galvez, I'm picturing myself in my school uniform back in my country, in my house, coming back from school. If I had that in mind, that I was going to be serving a community, that would have never crossed my mind. I wanted to be a journalist, I think, which that did not go well, of course. Thank goodness I like accounting. But having that opportunity to serve my community has allowed me to discover my own purpose as well. So those two combined is, I think it's the right recipe for us, for my two sisters and I. And that's the reason why we keep doing what we do, and we keep pursuing the clients that we pursue.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think just the other day, somebody was asking me, how do you feel about working with friends and family? And I know my rules about friends and working with friends and family. You work with your sisters.
Yes.
How has that been for you, one? And secondly, like, what are maybe some tips? Because it's really successful. I mean, like, you're a founder of a company, and your sisters too. And it's such a beautiful partnership that you have.
Yeah.
Maybe for somebody who's like, actually, I do want to hire my family, or I do want to work with my family. Do you have any like tips or things that like you've learned through that process that have kind of set you up for success in working with family?
Yes. Well, one thing that identifies us in my two sisters and I is that we really work as sisters. We protect one another. So if you have siblings in your home, if you are the youngest, I'm the youngest of the three, and I was always the loud one. I was always the one that would embarrass them in public because, they were in their teen years, and I was this, little girl just making them embarrassed of the things that I would do. But as time went by, we continued to protect one another. We had personal experiences that really made us do that, protect one another of so many things. So when I started the idea of creating an accounting service based company, the first thing I said was, hey, to one of my sisters, do you want to go into this together? And without hesitation, they both jumped right in.
Yeah.
And that was because of the connection that we've always had. So I remember one of them, the oldest, who is the first one that came to work with us full time, she was approached by her former boss and said, good luck working with your sister. And
it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a few years later, I think this is her 7th year that she's full-time with us. And she said it's the best thing that happened. And that just makes my heart warm, and it makes me feel that this idea has also aligned with her purpose. And it's not just what I brought to the table. They are the reason why this worked. They are the reason why this project works the way it does, because they protect me. They have my back. I have their back. And whenever we have a situation that requires one of us to jump in, they're the first ones that would do it for me. And that alone is just a huge blessing. My recommendation, and I do this quite often, actually, I talk to families, and I consider my service to be a family service for families, because I have a lot of clients that work with their families, husbands, wives, working
That's very
together.
common in the Latin world. I mean,
Super
we have
common.
it in American culture, but I think it's way more common
Super
in the Latino
common.
world. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and maybe the Hispanic community won't let me lie about this, but here's something that happens very frequently. And I'm going to share my little secret with you.
Tell all of us.
So you're going to see, for the most part, I can't be general about this, but very frequently, the male in the family is the one that goes out and looks for the projects. Let's talk about a service-based company, right? Either construction or landscaping or any other service industry. The husband is the one that creates the contract, goes out and looks for the client, and in most cases does the work, the hard work. The wife.
But the
wife is the one that manages the finances. The husband comes home, or could come home, and says, hey, this is what we earned. Here is the money. And she has to find a way to distribute that money properly. And in most cases, she's the accountant in the household, right?
Yeah.
So this is very common in my culture. So when I talk to the family, my go-to person, guess who it is?
The wife.
The wife. It's always the wife. The husband will not know how to set up an appointment through Calendly with me, but the wife will figure it out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So whenever I work with families or husbands and wives, my main point of contact for the most part is going to be the wife, because in our culture, the majority, again, I'm not generalizing, just the clients that I have happened to work with, the female leaders in our communities, we handle the money. And with that mentality is that I know who do I need to talk to, who makes the decisions about the money.
Maker.
Exactly. So that's where it comes down to. And so again, we can communicate with our community. We can really establish that intimate connection with them. And that's why I think this partnership with my sisters works, because we come from a very strong group of women, starting with my mom, my grandma. I mean, I can go on and all the way back to my ancestors. But no, it's something that really makes me proud. And because I identify with this, I feel like I can connect with that community. Yeah.
So that is so beautiful. It's interesting hearing you talk about it, because I've heard, not just in my own clients, but just being in Miami, I have so many friends who it's like they work for the family business, or they broke out from the family business, or one of my newer clients, they took over one of their parents' business, and then they're scaling it. It's so beautiful to watch, right?
Yes.
How it was the parents just they built the business, but now the kids are really the ones to explode the vision and scale the company, And so it's really cool to kind of watch and to compare what you're saying to what I've seen. Be oh yeah, that's absolutely accurate, definitely.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a bad thing in any way. It is also important to identify that generations are changing. So
Absolutely.
You are working with the newer generation, and perhaps this scenario that I just painted is completely different, and it would be completely different, but the part or the demographics, the groups that I'm serving are the ones that I am providing my services to fall within that category. And this is where the connection was found. And going back to what you mentioned earlier, how the families work together and how this is part of what we target as a company, is because sometimes we don't even look for it. Sometimes we are connected because someone said, oh, by the way, my husband and the cousin or whoever it is, they're working. All the cousins are working with this person. And that's how I get the connection with them. Yeah. But the generations, and you are the expert in this, you know how different are nowadays in terms of regardless of the background or your nationality, things are going to be different no matter what. But for us is our honor, to help that part of the community, and that's where we find joy and alignment with. So
cool. So in terms of like working with your sisters, when you're in work mode, right? Like, do they get everything is set up the same way it would be like a new employee? Like if they were onboarding, do they get full onboarding training? Or like, with family, I think so many times, as someone who does QuickBooks cleanups, a lot of the things that I'm cleaning up are the husband started a business. Yeah. The husband hired his wife as the bookkeeper or accountant. The wife didn't have any QuickBooks training or any accounting background. And so I'm hired to come and clean up the work because she was doing the best that she could. It's nothing against her. Yes. She worked with what she knew and what she had, and she'd watched some YouTube videos, so she figured out how to do QuickBooks from like a very basic level, But it's like, but the business as it scaled and grew, it got more complex. Yes. And she's just doing the best that she can. And then I get hired to come in and be like, let's make some adjustments here. You know what I mean? Yes. But part of that is due to like hiring family without proper onboarding or hiring family without proper training. If the wife had been trained in QuickBooks or trained in accounting, they might not have been in the scenario that they were in. Yes. You know what I mean? So like when you're hiring family, do you have any like, make sure you do this or always do this or like, you know what I mean?
Yes. So for us, what works is that we have identified, after 9 years of working together, we have identified what are the things that we are good at. And that really helps. I am normally the connection or the face that onboards the clients. But then when it comes to hiring them and making them part of this project, it was easy for us because we had a goal in common. And we realized, okay, in order to get here, we need to work collectively. And yes, in terms of the technicality part of it, we are all employees of the company. And our processes are established in a way that it helps us to identify who is in charge of what. Like, for instance, one of my sisters works directly with this client in Los Angeles that it's a cargo service company. I don't get involved. I don't even touch it because she is the one that handles that, right? And to this day, I'm the only one that prepares taxes. So if down the road they're interested in working with tax services, it'll be their decision, but I don't force that training upon them. And as we decide who works with what client, we consider the skill sets that we have. Early on, we adopted the cloud-based solutions, and we wanted that to be part of our practice for all businesses, even those that don't have that savvy techie knowledge, especially in the Hispanic community. That's very common. But we help them. We hold their hand and we bring them on. Now, with our sisters, we have that process that if you're working or you've had this relationship with this client for this long, you stay with that client. I'm not going to step into the relationship that you built with that client. So yes, they do get training. We all do in terms of how do we utilize our resources. So in today's conference, I was the only one that came in today, but they have, or in the past, my middle sister and I have been the ones going to conferences, and we split in the discussion so that you can take notes on this and I can take notes on that. And my other sister is the one who is now learning through on-demand videos and in training that really allows us to provide that service that we need to our clients.
So good.
Yeah. We try.
Yeah.
We're trying.
So if I take like what I'm hearing you say is like being really clear on roles.
Yes.
Like I think like having Like, do you guys have a written, like, this is what this person does, this is what this person does? Because, like, you can have a business for a long time without ever writing down or systematizing, you know? And so it sounds like, based on what you're saying, like, it's really important to have systems in place and to be very clear about, like, whose role is what and what that role is.
Certainly.
And then kind of keeping people in their lane in terms of roles.
Yes. And that's something that works for also our clients when we work with them, or when I meet up with my client, and let's use the husband and wife scenario again, right? Yeah. The wife who didn't get the proper QuickBooks training. Well, maybe the wife wants to learn how to use QuickBooks. Yeah. Maybe that is how she feels that she adds value to the business that the husband started. And if that is the case, then how do we align, with the wife, and how do we have that conversation with them and determine, okay, so if you want proper training for this, this is what we can do to help. So establishing a role in any organization, regardless of the size, you can be a one person running the show, and you need to have your role identified. And if you haven't done so already, write it down.
Absolutely.
Write it down, because in our cases, in my case, I am a tax professional, and I'm also doing bookkeeping work. But what do I focus the most? I'm an accountant, tax professional. I'm an enrolled agent. So that is my role. I focus in a lot of the taxes. My two sisters, they work in more bookkeeping tasks. So once we establish that, at the beginning of my practice, it helped me to say, okay, so if I like taxes, this is the thing that really gets me going and what I enjoy. So that is the type of conversations that I have with my clients, and that is what I focused on. And my role needs to be established since the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I'm even learning that too as I'm scaling my company too. And one thing I learned recently is, like, instead of creating a role and putting a person in it, why don't you find a person and create the role around the person?
Ooh, I like that.
And, like, when I even brought on my new assistant, Evan, who is, like, such a rock star, I adore her. In the first conversation we had, it's like, what do you like? What do you want to do? Yes. What are you trying to do? What's your goal? What's your vision? And then how can I build, like, I have all these needs, but I don't want to just be like, oh, here's all the things I don't like to do. It's like, okay, I found a person that I love. How can we set them up for success in what they like to do, and create a role based on what they want? And because at the end of the day, if they're not happy, one, they're not going to stay.
Yes.
And two, they're not going to do good work.
Correct.
And so it's like a win-win, right? Like, I want her to be happy. I want to be successful. So how can we take what the person loves and then create, okay, these are all things that need done. This is my skill set. This is her skill set. This is my loves, and these are her loves. And of course, we're all going to have things that we do for work that we don't love, right? We all have tasks we don't love. But I think it's so important to not just be like, okay, here's the role. Let me just put somebody in it. And I think so many business owners do that. They're like, I need a person to do this. So I'm just going to hire a person that can do that skill and drop them in. But then the person either doesn't last, or it doesn't work out, or, so many things happen. And it's because they didn't build the role around the person. And in corporate, that's different, right? In corporate, there's roles, and you can't shift them as much.
Yes.
But that's one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur, is you get to create the roles. And so it's not just like having the right people on the right bus. It's having the right people on the right bus in the right seats.
Yes.
And when you get the right people on the right bus in the right seats, then the bus rides smoothly, and the company can scale, and operations are smooth. And so, like, I feel like what I'm hearing you say is, it's not just like, oh yeah, we love each other. It's also like our roles are built around what we're good at and what we love. And so there's synergy there.
Yes.
It syncs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think what you mentioned now, it's a complete eye opener and aha moment for me at this point, because you said that it's so, it's important to bring the person to the right role versus creating the role and then go find that person. And it's magical, because in our the services that we provide, or the clients that we serve, are at the size or smaller, right, in terms of operations. So what really is important is your real purpose into developing this business or creating a project or how you scale this new project or how you help it grow. And I mean, it's important for us, obviously. We are not in our 20s, even though we look like we're in our 20s.
Absolutely, we do.
Of course. But one thing that is important is also think about the longevity, right, in this business. Because yes, we are young, we have all the energy, and we serve a community that has all the energy. But also as entrepreneurs and business owners, we should really think about the longevity piece. And this is where having a good team, and in my case, my family, is crucial. I cannot do it alone.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have tried and tried and tried to do it alone.
We absolutely tried forever to do it alone. I can do it by myself.
Yes, and we could probably, but we're going to be stretching ourselves
that way.
so thin, yes, that you're going to be burned out. You're going to be super tired, and then you're not going to grow at the pace that you want to grow.
Like I did.
Yes.
That's how, like, when my doctor was like, when he first diagnosed me with an autoimmune, he was like, so do you have high stress? Asking an entrepreneur if they have high stress, it's like laughable, right? Well, well, my marketing department is me, and my HR department is me, and the CEO, founder, COO team is also me, you know, and the accounting department is me, and
we
the
need
finance
to hire
department is me, you know, and it's like, I need to hire another me,
Yeah.
you know, and then they're like, are you stressed and tired? Of course I am.
It's so crucial.
Yeah, you have to hire people to scale.
Yes.
You know, and so it's like learning how exactly do you scale. Yes. But shifting gears a little bit, you said something to me one day that just like, it stuck with me so much and it blew my mind. You asked me a question. I think we were on a Zoom call one day, and you were like, this is the difference between the people that I work with and a lot of Americans. And it was like, if you started a business and you needed to borrow $10,000 to start your business, could you ask your parents? Of course.
Yeah.
And your friends, if they were starting a business and they needed to ask their parents to borrow $10,000, could they? I was like, yeah, of course. And you said, but a lot of the Latino community can't do that. They're either children of immigrants, immigrants themselves, or they don't know about credit or how to get loans, or they aren't able to get loans because they don't have credit. And I recently, started really digging into business credit and learning these things, but it was like, my parents never funded my business, not a dime. I've done it all myself. But what they did do is they were both entrepreneurs, they were both accountants, and they taught me about money from a very young age.
Yes.
And they were both successful. And so, like you said, if I needed money, there was a safety cushion.
Yes.
If I started a business and it failed and, something happened, like my parents, I'm sure, I never asked them this, but I'm just going to assume they would absolutely step in.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But in your case, or not yours specifically, but like in the community that you work with, you were explaining to me like that's not the reality for a lot of Latin people, and especially for like the Latino community that you work with. So you were telling me how you help Latino entrepreneurs get set up for success, how you teach them like, okay, these are actually the skills that you need, and this is also where you can go to get money, and this is where you can go to scale, and this is kind of how you do it. Could you, if there's some Latino entrepreneurs listening today who are like, oh my gosh, that's me. I want to scale. I don't have the safety cushion of my parents, and I don't have that financial backing. What do they do? What are your tips? What do you teach your people?
This is, oh my gosh, it gives me the chills.
Yeah.
I'm not lying. It really gives me the chills because it is so important. And for me, it aligns with my very personal purpose and my family purpose, which is to break that generational poverty that happens.
The poverty.
Yes, in our community. And the reason why is because of some of the factors that you mentioned. Some of them are immigrants, first generation. Others are just getting started into this country that went through the process. So now what? I want to start my business. What do I do? So having access to capital is super important. It's the one thing that is going to allow you to start.
Yes.
So in the last study, and of course we talk numbers. So
that's what we love. You guys will be bored, but we could do it all day.
Here we go. So, and I'm not lying about this. There is a growth of approximately 44% in the Hispanic small businesses, right? So in the last year, I want to say in the 2020 study, and I'm going to find the reference for you, but there is a good source through the Small Business Administration. And they are estimating a 44% growth in 2020. This was as of 2020. Of course, the pandemic, we're not considering those factors at the moment, but a 44% growth up until 2020. That means approximately 470,000, right? Businesses in the U.S. small businesses have flourished, right?
In
they
the
have
Latino
started.
Community.
Hispanic community, yes.
Beautiful.
What does this mean? For you, if you're a Latino business owner now, you probably are part of that 44%, right? What do you need to scale or to grow your business? You probably need capital. You need resources. You may need assistance to buy that inventory that you need to resell, to collect from the clients that you haven't received payment from. And you need to pay your employees. If you're a restaurant, you need to pay rent. You need to pay utilities. How do you achieve that? There are many ways that you can start. Number one, a lot of us, in my case, we didn't have the backup. I couldn't go to my mom and say, hey, Mom, I need $10,000 to start my business, right?
Casual.
She would have said, sure, I'm going to go lift my mattress and see if I have $10,000 underneath that mattress. Not the case in our house. But what I did, I can only share with you my personal experience, and what I tell this to some of the clients that I talk to. If you have that full-time job and you have that passion to begin a side or a business, build capital to cover your basic expenses at the beginning, right? For a few months, considering that you wouldn't have any money coming in, right? Save capital from your full-time job. Yes, you may have to work 2 jobs. I did it. Save enough money. Once you have saved money, invest that money. And how do you invest it? If you are going to invest it in the one thing that you believe, and if that one thing is your business, invest it in your business. Because you're not going to go knock at people's doors and ask for funding to invest in your business if you're not willing to invest yourself into your own business. Right? From there on, if you have that family, if you have that uncle, if you have anybody that you can ask friends, but repay that debt. Very important. And lastly, I would say also, after you invest, how do you grow it? How do you establish it? Then you can probably ask creditors, but not until you have proven that you yourself invested in that business before you ask anybody else for money. And so once we have that conversation, how do I get a loan? There are many programs. In fact, one of them that I'm working with currently in the state of Oregon, it's a bank, a credit union that creates this type of programs where we are helping business owners and providing advisory services. They fund part of it. And what is the path? Going into a capital infusion path, right, that allows them to request a mini or a micro loan. There are many companies that are willing to provide you a micro loan, and that would be one way. And a micro loan can be anything from $1,000 to $20,000, right? So those things are also important to keep in mind.
So in terms of people like saving their money, you know, like you said, having the full-time job before, I think so many entrepreneurs think like, oh, I'm going to start a business and all of a sudden there's going to be income. And it's like,
surprise!
Surprise! You have expenses before you have income.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, working 2 jobs. Is there like a dollar amount that you're like, you need this as a safety cushion? Is there like 3 months worth of expenses or $10,000? Or is there like, do you give a gauge like, hey, before you go out on your own and work this passion project, like this is your safety buffer? There's like, is there a dollar amount that you recommend?
Realistically, I can't really say a dollar amount because everybody's situation is different and we live in different states. So the cost of living is really different. When I was in California, I had saved enough for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I told my sisters, okay, for 6 months, I have enough to pay my rent, utilities, and food. So basic things, right? I did not shop for anything. And I didn't really need to spend money on anything else. And whenever I had that emergency grocery shopping, sometimes I would go to my sister's home and, hey, I'm here with my little bag. And I would go get the plátanos or the frijoles or whatever we needed, right? And so that helped me. I had 6 months of savings, considering that I didn't have any income coming in.
Yeah.
Before I could make some money. Or at least cover enough to pay for my basic expenses and then say, okay, I can live off of this. And a year and a half later, we were able to hire my sister, the oldest, as a full-time. In this process, my 2 sisters had their full-time jobs. They didn't jump off the ship right off the bat. No. They had their full-time jobs. And then they came and joined me.
I think that's so relatable for so many people who, you know, they're like, yeah, that's me. I'm hustling. You know, I'm trying to do my full-time thing. In terms of like getting credit, like it's so different, you know, the way that you grew up versus the way that I grew up. And I think it's important to like acknowledge that, right?
Yes.
Like it's a lot easier to start a business when you have parents who teach you how to reconcile bank accounts
absolutely.
at 12 and 13 years old, like mine did.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, like, I think it's important to just, like, be aware of that and to acknowledge that it's easier when you have a head start, 100%. But also in terms of, like, what you were saying about, like, okay, so they saved the money, and then in your experience, like, how long does it take before they could get, like, do they need credit to get a microloan? Or because... is there like I don't know, does the SBA do like loans specifically for Hispanic business owners? Or are there things that are like specific to the Latino community that they can like pull from?
Yes. And I don't work for the SBA, just full disclosure here. But I find their resources so helpful because at some point I was also an advisor of one of their branches, which is called the Small Business Development Center. And those are free resources, information that is out there and available for free. You don't have to pay anything. Yeah. And so what they help you with is in creating a business plan. And what does a business plan cover? Part of it is that financial literacy piece, right? How to know if you have enough to show in books to a lender before you can request a loan. So that part of the process, I think it's important to understand. Most of us didn't grow up thinking, oh, I need to save for retirement money, or
really,
or exactly, yes, or we need to invest in a property so that an asset appreciates over time, and then I have something to fall back on, you know, as a backup, right? I didn't grow up that way, and I love what you said when you said that our situations were different, because it is the reality of this beautiful country.
Yeah,
a lot of the communities that we serve are different from the way a lot of people grew up. And this is how having access to capital is not going to be the same for someone who had that family backup as someone who is starting from scratch, doing it while having a full-time job. So to have access to a microloan, for instance, and the SBA resources, in fact, one of the I want to say the resources that I use was a fund that was available, and I applied to it a few years back, and it was for Latinas, women, right? Minority groups in Southern California. So one thing that is important to also understand is that your demographics, sometimes not only who you are or who you identify with or who you represent, but also the zip code where you live.
Okay.
That is also something to know.
Okay.
And you can reach out to your local small business administration office and see what lenders they are in connection with and who they can recommend. And that can be a resource as well.
And I love something that you said too about like the financial literacy piece. You know, like maybe people want to get capital, but this happened so much actually with the PPP loans. My business. Oh my gosh, I'm like hitting my microphone on my face. We got so many calls during COVID. Why? Because people wanted PPP loans, government funding, capital. That's essentially what it is, right? But they had never hired an accountant or a bookkeeper and did not have any financial statements.
Yes.
And so many entrepreneurs like, I can run my business myself. I can run it myself. You can absolutely run your business yourself.
Yes.
But if you don't have proper financials, you're not going to get capital. You need financial statements. You need to know what a balance sheet is. You need to know how to read it. You need to know what a P&L, a profit and loss, or also called an income statement, what it is, how to read it, what's your profit, what's your cash flow, what you were talking about earlier about like having that savings of money, that's your cash flow. How many months can I go without having income before
you run out?
I run out.
Literally, you run out of cash.
Managing your cash flow. And so it's so important, I think, for business owners to work with tax preparers and
accounting professionals.
Yeah, not just because, like, I'm not here to, like, sell my services. I don't care if you work with me. I don't care if you work with her. Like, go to an expert, because when you go to talk to lenders, if you don't know numbers,
yes,
it's over. They're not going to help you. They're like, you don't even know what you're doing. Why should I invest money into you?
Agreed.
You know, like, you have to have some sort of financial literacy. And so if you're like, I want to get capital, but I have nowhere to go or know what to do, start with reports. Anybody who's going to invest in you outside of mom and dad will require, actually my parents would have required a financial statement. When I was in college, I had to give them financial statements for them to continue supplying me with my funds, because they were like, we want to know that you're spending your money properly before we actually help you.
And I love that, because in someone said to me once, in order for you to establish a profitable business, you need to save, invest. We already talked about investing in order for it to grow. So
invest, you mean putting money into the business.
Putting money into the business.
Not like getting stocks.
Yes.
Right? You don't mean like investing in the stock market. You
Thanks
mean
for
like
clarifying
spending money on your business, meaning mentorship, if that's what's needed, if you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or buying the equipment that you need, or buying the inventory that you like. Just spending money in your business is investing in your business. Or spending money on yourself to grow is also investing in your business. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's a tax deductible.
And it's the biggest asset that you have is yourself. So the fact that you and I are here in this conference today, we're not partying out, right? Going out and going crazy. We're investing in ourselves. This conference is an investment in. And one thing that really resonated with me at the very beginning of my business was, if I am going to invest in my business, right, I need someone to invest in my business. First, I need to invest in it myself from my own savings, from my own money. What did I need to start? I needed a computer, okay? How much are computers nowadays, right?
Depends on what kind. $2,000 if you want a Mac.
Right.
Easy.
I mean, everything requires investment.
Yes.
So you're going to build that capital, and you're going to create that cash or access to that capital. But before you think about a loan, think about how much you're willing to put into that business yourself, because this is your business. It's your baby.
It's your baby.
It's your baby.
It's absolutely your baby.
Yep.
I always talk about that with my clients when, I'm like, I get it. When they come to you with messed up books, or they come to you because their finances are messed up. Nobody calls an accountant when everything's in order, right? They call us when they messed up.
Yes.
And so we have to be so like gentle and empathetic to them, because like, we get it. We get that this is your baby, because this is also my baby.
Yes.
Like I can feel your pain. It's very intimate and vulnerable. Accounting is, because you're in somebody's, like, how people spend their money and how they mess up their money, how they mess up things about their money.
Yes.
It's very personal, and it's often rooted in their trauma or it's rooted in their pain, or it's rooted in how they grew up. It's a very intimate conversation. You don't talk about your finances with people for a reason.
Absolutely.
People don't know the intimacy of how you spend your money. And there's a reason that we keep that to ourselves. It's so tied to those things.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, there's this spending behavior that you realize. And the discovery process, when we onboard a new client, one of the things that we do is we communicate with them, and we want to know what are their goals.
Yeah.
That's important, because the same way that you said when you were hiring and looking for your executive assistant, it's the same thing when they're having that conversation with you. And as an accounting professional, we want to know, what are your goals, not only financially, but what are your other goals? What are your personal goals? Maybe with that couple, husband and wife that we talked about, maybe that couple wants, maybe they want to go on a honeymoon that they never could afford to have. Maybe that's their goal. Maybe they want to go back to their country. I mean, I cannot begin to tell you the nostalgia and the love that I have for my country. Whenever I go back and I land and I smell my country, it feels amazing. Maybe that's their goal they have.
Yeah.
Right? And how do I, as an accountant and as their tax professional, how do I help them to achieve that? And that's why I take my job, like you said, at a very intimate level, in terms of, okay, if that means that I have to tell the wife not to go spend money on this, let me talk to the wife.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation.
We're here to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of this is fascinating because it aligns with my very own purpose, right? Which is what I mentioned to you, which was to break that generational poverty that I grew up in. And now what we're trying to do is help business owners, help the Hispanic community, those bilingual and non-bilingual, because not necessarily do you have to speak Spanish to consider yourself a Hispanic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And how do I help that community in achieving their goals and their purpose? And that's where I come in. And that's how I enjoy it.
That's so fun. I love it. I'm laughing at what you said about they don't have to speak Spanish, because my dad is one of 6. And most of my cousins are Latina and Latino. And
I knew that was in you.
But I personally, like, very gringa, you know, but all my Latin friends are like, you're so Latina.
Oh, no, you have that sauciness, you have that sabor, you have that flavor in you. Of course you have it.
But I laugh because, like, so many of my cousins are Latin, but my Spanish is better than theirs.
Huh.
Because they didn't speak it, you know. My aunt is Puerto Rican, and my other aunts are Mexican. My other cousins, their dad is Mexican, so they're Mexican.
Beautiful.
But some speak Spanish, but a lot of them, I remember one of my half Puerto Rican cousins came to visit me, and I was like, don't you feel at home, you know? Like, Miami and he was like, no, like, I don't even speak Spanish. And I was like, you don't speak Spanish? And he's like, you speak Spanish? You know? And I never, like, grew up in a Spanish or a Latin community until I lived in I studied Spanish for 10 years in school. And, but I never used it. I never needed it. You know, I didn't ever live in a Hispanic environment until I moved to Miami. And then I was like, I love this. These are my people, you know, like, I feel so at home here. But it never really clicked that so much of my family was Latin. It just didn't. Yeah. I just never thought about it. It wasn't beautiful. A topic of conversation, really. And so
I love it.
That was so fun.
I love it. I love it. And it's true, because I lived in Los Angeles for more than 20 years. And in Los Angeles, we have a huge Mexican population and a huge Central American population, but the Mexicans outnumber us, right? So in that sense, you also have people that have been maybe 3 generations already in, and they don't speak Spanish. Yeah. Right? And you may feel like, oh, that husband and wife story that we keep talking about does not really apply to them. Interesting. Because it's a different generation.
Yeah, wow. See, in Miami, I feel like most people do speak Spanish. I would say most people either speak Spanish or Spanglish.
Yes.
The national language of
the
Miami.
Spanglish.
is Spanglish. We're our own little country.
Of course. Yeah. It's amazing because in the cultural mix, right, whether it's Miami, Los Angeles, Oregon, or Washington, or whatever it is that you find yourself in, when you find a community, the things that identify you are not only the food, the language, yeah, that's the surface.
Yeah.
But what really makes you connect, I think, is that you are able to share the same goals and the same purpose in why did you come to this country, right? That's a lot of the times the conversation that I have with my clients, like, why did you come here? What was the reason that motivated that person back in your country to come here? Why? Prosperity, right? Better opportunities.
Yeah, American dream.
The American dream. Of course we wanted that. And now things may be different for some people. To me, they continue to be the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the times the conversation that I like having with my community. Why are we here? And how, now that we're here, okay, so we made it. Yay. We're the ones that are staying. Okay. How do we go from here? How do we move forward? How do we grow? And how do we become this empowering, nurturing community for the world? Yeah. Not just one country. So one city at a time.
My heart. I love this. Okay, so just wrapping up, two things. One, what would be like one or two key takeaways for Latino entrepreneurs? Mm-hmm. Like if you're like, okay, you started the business. You're an entrepreneur. You've started the business. If you want to scale or grow your business, like what is like the one thing that you could do today? And maybe it's what we talked about. Like maybe it's get financial statements. Or if you don't know how to do that, start with financial literacy to learn what they are. If you don't know what they are, like I'm just making suggestions. But like what would you say are like the one or two things that like you could do today, you could do right now that would set yourself up for success to be able to get in capital or lending or to be able to scale? And then two, where can people find you?
Yay. Okay, so starting with how they can scale, right? And I'm speaking to familia, mi gente, la comunidad latina. Can I say this in Spanish?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Tenemos que buscar la forma de aprender cómo leer nuestros estados financieros. Contraten un profesional. Hire a professional. Busquen ayuda. Find help. Sí, podemos hacerlo solos, pero lo hacemos mejor con ayuda. Yes, you can do it yourself, but you will do it better with help. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, if you don't have an accounting professional or anybody in the finance industry to work with that will help you maybe start that micro loan application that you had in the back of your head and you didn't start the process because you didn't know how to begin, guess what? There are thousands.
So many.
Thousands just in this conference alone.
There's 3,000 of us in this building.
Yes, that's how many of us are.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we're passionate about not only numbers, but we're passionate about helping small business owners. And that is how you scale. That is how you grow. And if the loans are not an option, how to invest in yourself, how to grow, maybe buying your first asset. Maybe that's a big goal for you. Maybe you want to buy that first property. Maybe you want to buy that first commercial office where you're currently established, or maybe you want to buy inventory. Those are assets, right? So understand your finances and hire a professional that will guide you in understanding these finances and that aligns with your goals and make those goals clear, right? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And I would start with that.
I love that. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because I'm also like so passionate about the Latin community. Like if I look at my best friends in Miami, One of them, she's not even gringa. She's a Ukrainian. Grew up in the States. But like all of my friends are Latina. Like the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking of one of my best friends who started her own etiquette company, and another one who's wanting to start her own production and travel dance company. And just like one is Dominican, one is Cuban, another one's Colombian, another one's Puerto Rican. And I'm just like,
I love it.
You know, like I'm also so passionate about that community because that is my circle of friends.
Yes.
Those are my people, you know? And so I love that we get to have this conversation and just
thank you.
And merge the two worlds.
Thank
together,
you for making the space.
You know?
Thank you really for creating the space.
I love it.
It's great.
I'm so happy that we were able to make this work while we're both in the same city, which is rare.
Yeah.
And so it just like, it makes my heart so happy to have you here and to be able to speak into that.
Thank you.
To speak into that community, you know, because I feel like even though I'm not by blood Latin, like I love my people.
You're the honorary Latina.
Honorary.
Always.
I even made it into the Latina photo at
Of course
camp,
you did.
Because
so. You are.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
This. If people want to connect with you or talk to you, how can they find you?
Okay, I am on Instagram, Daniela_ASNBS or ASNBS Bookkeeping and Tax. You can always find me on Facebook or my email at Daniela, my middle name, at asnbs.com.
Awesome.
Or my website too. I have a website. I'm not a salesperson.
Tell them your website.
www.asnbs.com.
Perfect. And I'll put all that info in the description below.
Thank you.
But I'm so glad that you're here. This
Me
was
too.
so fun. And that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining us. And remember, today is a great day.